Hi there everyone, welcome back to Dandelion Delphi Tutorials. This lesson is for the grade 12s as we are going to have a look at a OOP question. You will find this in the Supplementary of 2016, question 2. This question has to do with a mountain pass and people traveling on it, and here they are giving us the names of the attributes. Now in these years, learners were either answering this question in Delphi or Java, but you can ignore the Java bits. We'll just focus on the Delphi. We have the following attributes, and we always given this table in exams. The name, that's the name of the mountain pass. The distance in kilometers. Now this doesn't really help us to know whether it's going to be integer or real, so it would be something that we would have to check in the provided code. If we have a look at what is provided, we scroll up to the top, you'll see distance is an integer. That would be important to take note of. And then the gradient, that is the gradient of the steepest part of the pass in degrees. Again, a number that you would have to check whether it would be integer or real, and that would be an integer level. Variable. I was looking at the level that I skipped. The danger level is a word, either low, medium, or high. It is important when you start any question to look at what code has been provided. Now, when I have a Delphi program open, like I have the memo open at the moment in Delphi and I want to open another file, I usually just use Notepad++ to open it. So here it is. This is the code that was supplied to you. So there we have all the attributes, but it is important to take note of these accessor methods. There were 4 that were provided because we're going to use them in the main form. The first question asks us to write a constructor method that receives, that's the word you want to highlight, and then start numbering because now we're going to be listed the number of parameters that we need. The name of the mountain pass, that's 1. Distance of the pass in kilometers, that's 2. The danger level 3, and the gradient of the pass as the 4th parameter. And they are going to be used to initialize the attributes of the class. Press pause and try this part yourself. And here's my constructor create. I have the name and the danger level, which are both strings, so I've just listed them together there. And then the distance and the gradient with the integer data type there, to match these parameters with the attribute data types to which they're going to give values. I'm coding here in 2 lines so it's easier for you guys to see, but you can just code in 1 long line. Remember to do only one method at a time, and then we'll push Ctrl+Shift+C and we'll complete our constructor create. Our fields or attributes start with an F. Remember F for first. They go on the left, our parameters go on the right. And we just make sure that they match who they're giving values to. So distance must be distance, and danger level, and gradient, F gradient. Should you swap the attributes and the parameters around, this whole question, which would be 40 marks of your exam, will not produce any output. So very important to get this part right. The next question asks us to write a mutator. Remember, mutators are procedures, and we're going to call it set danger level. And we are going to update F danger level. This part here was for Java, so you can ignore that. To the danger level received as a parameter. So there you can see it has a parameter. Press pause and try it yourself. There's my procedure, set danger level, receiving a parameter. It's going to make a change to danger level. So therefore, because danger level is a string, this parameter here would be a string data type. Remember, procedures don't have data types there. They just end with a semicolon. Now we can press Ctrl+Shift+C and complete our procedure or our mutator method. It's very similar to your constructor create, where my field is on the left and the parameter is on the right. And that was it. This here is what we would call an auxiliary method. It's not making a change to one of the fields in my class, and it is not returning one of the fields from my class as an accessor method would do. And therefore it's an auxiliary method. And for these methods we have to read carefully whether they are functions or procedures. So it says write the method calculate find. That receives, there's that word we want to highlight again. The time it took the tourist to travel up the mountain pass in minutes. In bold there for you. That's the first parameter. And then the second one is the speed limit applicable to the mountain pass in kilometers per hour. There's your two parameters, but also with some clues in there as well in bold to take careful note of. The method must calculate the average speed that was traveled and determine whether the speed limit was exceeded. Return a 0 if it was not exceeded, but if it was exceeded, we have to do the following. Now, if you haven't downloaded this paper, I suggest you need a screenshot of this because you will need it for the next bit. There it tells us how are we going to determine the fine. If the average speed exceeds the limit by less than 10 kilometers, the fine stays 0. If the average speed is exactly 10 kilometers per hour over, then the basic fine is 500. And then thereafter, anything over 10 kilometers per hour is an additional 100 Rand to be added to the 500 Rand. That was the basic fine. For every 3 kilometers or part thereof, a very important part of the sentence, that the speed limit was exceeded by more than 10 kilometers per hour. This here has quite a bit of information for you. There they show you how to calculate the distance in kilometers, to calculate the average speed, kilometers per hour. Press pause and try it yourself. Here are also some examples that they give you, but at this point you won't get any output. But it just helps you to understand the question. The speed limit is 80 kilometers per hour. They traveled 96 kilometers per hour. Therefore, it would be 500 Rand for the first part, and then anything over 10. So that would be 96 minus 80. That gives me 16. For the 6 kilometers per hour, we are charged for every 3 kilometers per hour, 100 Rand. So 6 divided by 3 would give me 2. So therefore, this will give me 700 Rand as the fine. The next one here says the speed limit was 60 and this person drove 83 kilometers. Now, when you have a look at this, 83 minus 60 would give me 23. So the difference now is actually 13 because remember the first 10 is 500 Rand. Now we're left with 13 kilometers per hour that they traveled over. You will need to then divide by 3, but you would need to round that value up because it said part of 3 kilometers. So that means if I divide 13 by 3, I'm going to get 4 point something, and that must be then rounded up to 5. And 5 times by 100 would be 500 Rand added to my initial fine of 500 Rand. So let's see what this code looks like. Since it said that this method must return a value, this would be a function, and it is going to return an integer answer for me because I'm going to always multiply it by integers. It's receiving the minutes that it took this person to travel up this pass as well as the speed limit. And from those examples I showed you, you could see that they were using integer values. So I'm going to declare these as integer values. Then you're going to push Ctrl-Shift-C. Oh, I forgot to tell you this. If we go back here, remember, it has to return a data type. There's my return data type. The result of my function will be integer. Very important to add, else Ctrl-Shift-C won't be working. First thing we had to do was calculate how fast they were driving. We have the distance. Remember, in our constructor create, we gave if distance a value. So now we can use it as though it has a value. And I have to calculate their speed. And speed is kilometers per hour. You can see how that even helps us. That's the divide. So I have my kilometers divided, but here I have to divide by hours. And I have received minutes. So for that reason, I divided by 60 there. Now I have my average. I have to determine how much they were over the limit. So if I take their average minus the limit that I received, that would give me that difference. I'm going to start with my result as 0 and then only change it if the value is greater or equal to 10. Remember, for anything less than 10, the result has to be returned as a 0, as they won't get a fine. So here I'm testing if this difference between their speed and then the limit is greater or equal to, very important, the equal sign there, than 10. Then I'm going to start the fine off, and that would be my result, with a value of 500. Now I have to determine how much they were over 10 kilometers per hour. So I'm taking their difference minus 10. You must remember, if this was exactly 10, my difference here would now be changed to 0. So when I do any calculations here, everything where I use our difference, which determines I over, that will all be 0. So it won't affect the exactly 10 kilometers per hour. Then the result will stay 500. But if that difference was more than 10, I will have my answer here in R difference, or R diff. And that is the number of kilometers that they were over the 10 kilometer limit that they were allowed. So then I have to take that value and divide it by 3. Remember, they said you have to pay 100 Rand for every 3 kilometers you were over the extra 10 kilometers, or any part of. Now that wording means that you have to use seal to round the value up. So that's why I have seal there. Remember, seal for sealing, you have to round that value up. So if it gets the answer like we had before, where I used the example of 4.1, it would round it up to 5. For this question, they did not add the math unit to your uses of this class. So you would have to go up, and there they provided sysutils, but you would have to add comma math here. In I over, I am storing now the number of hundreds, really, of what they are being charged. Result currently has a value of 500, and I add to that 100 times this I over I calculated here. So in our example where I said that we had a 13 kilometers per hour that we had to charge for, and we divided by 3, we got an answer here then of 4 point something. That would round it up to 5. I over then is 5, and I'm taking 500 Rand plus 100 times 5, and that's how we got to the 1,000 there. So should this have been 10, the difference here, this would be 0, or difference will be 0. 0 divided by 3 would be 0. Even if I seal it, I over would be 0. And I won't add any hundreds, so therefore my result is 500 still. There were many ways of accomplishing this question, but I think this is the quickest method that you could use. Now we come to the last method of the class that we have to create, named suggested danger level. It receives the average rainfall of the past. So there is my parameter. Over the previous 7 days, the method then returns. That means this method is a function. The word returns indicates it's a function. The suggested danger level. Now, this is the criteria. If the average rainfall is equal to or more than 10 millimeters, maximum gradient of the path exceeds 10 degrees. So both of these. the rainfall is 10 or more, and the maximum gradient exceeds means greater than, not necessarily equal to, it is suggested that the present danger level be increased to the next one. In other words, if it is low, it must go to medium, and if it was medium, it would go to high, and if it's high, it will stay high. Here they also tell us if an increase is not necessary or the level is already high, the present danger level must be returned. Press pause and try it yourself before I show you the memo. As I said, it would be a function, suggested danger level, and then as a parameter there I have the rainfall. It was a bit tricky to figure out why I've used this rainfall as real. Now, they did say it's an average, so averages are usually real, but if you're ever unsure about the data type of a parameter, go to the question paper to where this specific function or procedure in another example is called and see what happened there. Now, this was done in 2.2.4, and they talk about a two-dimensional array, and then they show you the values of the two-dimensional array, and then you'll see here you have to calculate the average rainfall yourself. So that means if I add those together and divide it by 7 for the 7 days, the rainfall over 7 days, that would be a real value. And then I would have to use that real value to set my danger level. So it's for that reason that I used P rain here, my parameter, as real. It is returning low, medium, or high, and therefore I have a string data type because that is the result of this function is a word. So then you push Ctrl-Shift-C, and I have two solutions here for you. First of all, the danger level will be returned if none of this is true. So I've started off with my danger level as if danger level. So the if statement here is testing if the danger level will change or if it's not high, because it can't go higher than high. It will stay high if it's high. So if it's not changing or if the danger level is high, that is what this function of mine will return in its result. Now I'm testing if the rain, that is my parameter, the average rainfall, very important, greater or equal to 10, and the gradient was greater than 10, only greater than, not greater than equal to. It said exceed. Remember, if gradient is one of my fields that I can use, one of the attributes we set in the constructor create. I also want to test that the danger level is not high because I want to use a nested if here. Yes, there were many other ways that you could have done this, but there we go. My danger level is not equal to high. Then I'm going to test if the danger level is medium. I'm going to change the result to high. Else, if this is all true, but it's not medium, that means that if danger level is low, I'm going to change my result there to medium. Another option is again to start with your result, if danger level there, and then test. I'm not even testing here for high. So I'm just testing if the rainfall is greater or equal to 10 and the gradient is greater than 10. I'm using a case statement here. I'm going to use the first letter of the danger level. So if it is L for low, my result is going to be medium. And then if it is M or H, then my result will be high. Any one of these two methods would score full marks. And there would be other as well. Just make very sure that your result will return the danger level if all of this is not true. I think that's the tricky part. And also not changing high to anything else. But that you'll only see once you get to the question where you call this function, which makes this question sometimes a little difficult. You will see that they provided you here with a toString, so you didn't have to code the toString in this case. They have done it for you. Now it's a good time to file save all and just run your program to see if you have any syntax errors before we move on to the next part of the question to complete the main form. Moving on to the main form now, we are going to instantiate the object in question 2.2.1. The user is going to select the mountain pass from the provided radio button. So you can see there, they're going to select it there. We're going to code there in button 2.2.1. And then we have to request the distance, danger level, and gradient of the mountain pass from the keyboard using dialog boxes. So dialog boxes make use of input boxes for each of these. And then we have to instantiate the mountain pass. They have declared the object for us. And very important, because there is a mark for this, is display a message to indicate the object has been instantiated. Very often learners get 149 out of 150 and they miss something silly like this. Besides this message, you're not going to get any output, but you can now press pause, try it yourself, test and run your program. I'll show you the memo soon. First thing we had to do was to get input from the user. That was from the radio group. So this line of code saves you time. You could have used the case statement, but it's a lot more code to write. So radio group dot items square brackets radio group dot item index in your square brackets and your semicolon. This same line of code will work for a combo box and for a list box. And then we were asked to use input boxes for the distance, the gradient, and the danger level. These two values I wanted as integers because in my constructor I had integer parameters, so therefore I'll store them. I'll use my string to int to store them as integer values. It's always important first to get your input from the user before you try to instantiate the object, because the input needs to send your parameters of your class values. Now this is the trick to remember how to instantiate your object, where they have declared your object. Copy that and then go to where you want to instantiate it, paste it there, change the colon, add an equal sign so it becomes an assignment statement, and then here add your dot create and an open bracket, and now you should see these hints here to help you with the number, order and data type that you need to put these arguments in. Let's just comment that out. Remember, our arguments, that's these local variables, need to send our parameters. I've copied the parameters here from the constructor create for you as a comment. The two needs to match in node, number, order and data type. So once you have this part going, in here we have number. There were 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters, so I'm sending it 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. Then order, first the pass name, that would be p name. S-pass is going to give p name a value. Then danger, then distance, then gradient. And finally, very important, the D is the data type. It's 2 strings. There we can see they were declared as strings, but we don't put the data type in there. We just must make sure that these 2 variables are strings, and then 2 integer variables for the next 2. And don't forget your show message to display that the object has been instantiated. You can test your program now, but again, not much will display. You'll just see this message, and they've provided you with this code here that will show the next panel. In the next button, we are asked to use the accessor methods. Remember, they provided us with a whole bunch of accessor methods to display the information about the mountain pass. Those were the get functions. Test whether the road map for the instantiated object exists, and if it doesn't, we're going to show no map found, else we are going to load the map. If you have a look there at the data files, you'll see there are my JPEG files. You can actually sort it by type. That would be easier. There's my 3 maps, and for one there isn't a map. Press pause, try it yourself. I'm going to show you some output just now. This here was when Buffyon's Kloof pass was selected in question 2.2.1. And then these values were entered in those input boxes. and there's no map, so that should be showing. And then also test here for Gamkas Kloof with 75 low and 11, and then there is the map that should be showing. We are displaying in the edit boxes. There are my 4 edit boxes for the name of the mountain pass, distance, danger level, and the gradient. And here everywhere I'm using my object name, mountain pass, dot, and then the accessor method, the get function that matches the edit box name. And important to remember that both get distance and get gradient are both integers, so they are functions that return an integer result, and for that reason we have to typecast using into string to be able to display it in the text property of that edit box. Both get name and get danger level were both strings, so nothing needs to happen here. String and string is compatible, so we can display it that way. Then they asked us to test if the picture was there. Now you can use file exists with a picture name as well. It doesn't only have to be a text file. You can test if any file exists in the folder of this question. So I'm using if file exists using mountainpass.getName. That's the name of the mountain pass. Plus then very important that JPG then. If it is found, so this is true, you could also say here equals to true. Then I will have my image.picture.load from file, and in the round brackets the name of the file with my file extension. Don't forget that file extension to add it there. If it was not found, the file was not there, then I will load the picture called nomap.jpg. And again, this code here was provided for you. So to test your program, you are going to select Bafion's Kloof pass there. Click there on question 2.2.1. I have put these initial values in the default value of the input boxes. So there's my distance, my gradient, and then the danger level. Now I get my message, the object has been instantiated, and this panel will now be showing. When I click on it, no input is needed here. When I click on it, there I have all the values that I need. I can then do the same, but I would have to close the program. Oh, I don't need to close the program first. I can now go back. I can click Gamkas Kloof pass. Click on that. It's 75 and 11 and low. Click OK. And click on this button. There's my map, and there's all the values that I needed. For this button, they just explain there that the user will enter the speed limit and the time it took them to travel in minutes. And then they say write code to do the following: obtain these values from the text boxes, use these values as arguments, and call calculate fine method that must calculate and return the fine that they have to pay. And then you have to display this amount here in the edit box. There's an example here of output and input for you as well. So press pause and try it yourself and test your program. There is a second example of input and output, so it would be important to test this one as well. Here they are entering the values, and I'm storing them as integers. Remember, my calculate fine made use of integer parameters, so therefore I'm going to send it integer arguments. I want to match arguments, which is local variables here, with parameters in my class in NOD, number, order, and data type. And we're going to display this as in the edit box edtFine.text. You could also have used another variable here and first called your function and then only displayed that variable in here, but I just did it all in one go. Did it over 2 lines here so you guys can see everything on the screen. So I have floater string f because we want to display in currency and 2 decimal places. And then I call my object.calculateFine. It had 2 parameters, so I'm sending it 2 arguments. First order, first the minutes, then the speed limit. And then data type, both were integer values, and this will produce the correct output now for me. In this question, they explain there that they provided you with a two-dimensional array rain, and it contains these values here, and the first row there indicates it's for Baffianskloof, and then the next one Gamkaskloof, and so on. And these also match. If you go to your radio group, you'll see it matches the order there. So we could use the item index possibly, but we'll have to go and have a look at how was array rain declared. It was declared with 3 rows, 1 to 3, and then the 7 days. So when they give you a 2D array like this here is row 1, this is row 2, and then this one is row 3. Remember now your radio group, the values for the item index is 0, 1, and 2, but here we have 1, 2, and 3. But it is very possible to make use of that item index to pick the right row, because now we are being asked to first use the two-string method to display the information about the mountain pass, but then we have to use the array rain to calculate the average rainfall for that mountain pass. Then we're going to use suggested danger level, that method to determine the danger level of the pass. And only if the suggested danger level differs from the present danger level, a dialog box must be used to ask the user whether they want to change it or not. If they want to change it, you're going to call set danger level method. We want to then display a message in the output area indicating whether no change was suggested, a suggested change was rejected, or the danger level was changed. And then they give us some examples of output, but let me move up here for you. I suggest that you guys maybe take a screenshot and then move on, press pause, code this bit, and then do the next bit. And then I'll show you the examples of output. So here you can press pause just to complete that final bit here. And then you can have a look at the output and test your program. There we go, lots of input, 3. I suggest you test all 3. The message must indicate the danger level in uppercase, as shown in the examples below, also something to note. There's an example of Baffianskloof Pass where this was entered. And there we go. For the next 2, maybe you want to take a screenshot of this. If you don't have the paper with you, this is important to test. And make sure you read properly as well. Here, a suggestion was made, but it was rejected. Whereas here with Prince Alfred Pass, the suggestion was accepted. And that changes this bit here and that bit there. So we're going to use our two-dimensional array. Now first they just asked us to call the two-string. Remember, two strings will be part of an output object. We have the mountain pass.toString there inside of the rich edit. It's a function, so it has to be called as part of another statement. Then here I have to get hold of the correct row. So we can use the item index plus 1. Row 1 was Baffianskloof. The item index is 0, so by adding 1, I'm going to go to the correct row of my two-dimensional array. And then the last one, the princess place, I can't remember the name, that would be item index 2, so that would be plus 1. I'll have a look at the values in my two-dimensional array then of row 3. I don't need to loop through both rows and columns because I'm only interested in one of the rows depending on which one was clicked on my radio group. Now to calculate the average, I've just been lazy here and I've just used the same variable. This is really my running total. So I'm looping through the columns. There were 7 days of the week. R average is R average plus the rainfall, my row and my column. Rows staying the same. Let's say they picked the princess place. Then this would stay 3 and then this will loop 1 to 7. Adding them all together, remember for variables on both sides of the assignment statement, it has to be initialized. There's a loop. We'll initialize it directly above the loop. Then I have to calculate the average. So this is my total, but dividing it by 7, and that would give me my average rainfall. And this average now I'm going to use next. But you'll see after the toString there was an empty line. So make sure you add that empty line there. Now we get to the if statement. We had to test if the current danger level, now the current danger level is in get danger level. If that is not equal to my suggested danger level, remember that returns for us a new danger levels. But if it's not the same, so this is a suggested one, this is what it is at the moment. Remember it had a variable there, or a parameter, so I have to send it an argument. I'm sending it the average rainfall. Then I have to ask them, do you want to change the danger level? If they then type yes, I'm going to change it. And I'm going to use set danger level. It's a procedure, a mutator. So it stands on its own. Procedures are not part of another statements. You'll see here, there's my object name dot set danger level with now the level that I want to change it to. So that is the same as this one here, set danger level, and then I have our average sending it that value. So let's say I changed it to high, this value here would be high, and now I'm changing my danger level to high. There in my output, I have to say the danger level was changed to, and now I can use get danger level. Because I've changed it in my class, if danger level has changed, when I use get danger level now, it would be my new value. And important, they said it had to be in capital letters. So that is the end there. Then, if the person, so this was not the same, but they said no, then it's going to run this code here in this else. Suggested change were rejected. So a change was suggested, but it was rejected. And it was kept at, and all I have here is I'm still using the get danger level for both of these as well. Okay, so everywhere we're going to use get danger level there to display what it is at the moment. But if this was the same, so this condition here was false, it would run this statement here in my else and say no change was suggested and the danger level remains, and I am using in there, I'm using uppercase and my danger level object name dot danger level as with all the others. Sometimes these if statements can become a bit confusing, so if you want to, you could always place a begin there and then we can put an end here. You just find the right place. So this would now be the else. Now it's easy. If you have the CN Wizard installed, now the colors make it easier for you. You can see the orange one, the if, begin, end, and else, that goes together. And on the inside of this if, I have another if. That's the green if, and its else sits there. Only thing you would have to change is, I think we need a semicolon at the end here. Yeah, we'll need a semicolon now at the end of that line. Before it wasn't needed because remember the line above an else does not need a semicolon. Very important that you make sure your program is working and that you are testing it against the examples of input and output. Thank you guys for watching Dandelion Delphi tutorials. This was definitely a grade 12 only question since it contained OOP as well as two-dimensional arrays. It's not the only time where 2D arrays were asked in an OOP question, so make sure you prepare for that. Please leave some comments and likes and ask some questions. I'll try and see if I can answer them online for you. Hope to see you soon.